Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's video announcement. We're going to be covering chapters 12, 13, and 14. May sound like a lot, but this is basically kind of reinforcing a lot of the things that you've already learned, not only in this course, but in the courses before this one. Chapter 12 deals with coding and reimbursement. The chapter emphasizes the importance of accurate coding and documentation to get optimal compliant reimbursement and revenue cycle management. Here are some key points from chapter 12. Clinical documentation integrity, or CDI, ensures that the provider documentation is thorough and supports the accurate code assignment. Coding management involves managing all the processes of coding. This involves monitoring coding using performance like CC, MCC capture rate, clean claim rate, denial rate, and other metrics. Coding compliance is what we need to do to have organizations code compliantly. And this involves a quality improvement plan to ensure that our coding is accurate and compliant. Finally, we'll get into something that's been talked about a lot, and that's all the tools and technology. Already we're seeing autonomous coding, encoders, AI, and some of these other things, which is dramatically affecting the coding and reimbursement world. Chapter 13 deals with revenue compliance, kind of tying into a little bit of chapter 12. One of the most common things AI is used for is claims denial. And this has resulted in major issues with fraud, abuse, and OIG investigations using AI and other technologies. We'll be taking a look at compliance programs, the role of the Medicare improper payment review entities, the recovery audit contractors, and other things involving the Office of the Inspector General, or the OIG. We'll be looking at different types of claim denials, including administrative, clinical, and validation denials, and what we can do to minimize those types of denials. We'll talk about error rate testing, the CERT program, and ethical coding practices, including the AHIMA standards of ethical coding. And then finally, we get into chapter 14. With all these technologies and everything that's affecting coding and reimbursement, we are seeing coding evolve from just applying codes to diagnostic statements or encounters or hospitalizations, and we're seeing it move to auditing. So we'll talk about different types of audits, internal versus external. We'll talk about audit tools and strategy. We'll talk about denials management and the increasing role of HIM professionals in auditing. Here are some final thoughts. As future HIM professionals, your understanding of coding accuracy, how it affects revenue compliance and auditing, will directly impact an organization's financial health and compliance. Be sure to review all these key terms that are in bold. You may want to spend some time reviewing those before you dive in and read the chapter in greater detail. That's all I have for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out or stop by during office hours. Thank you and have a great week.